Entrepreneurs and small business owners, are you feeling overwhelmed by lack of capital, growth challenges, or personal branding? You are not alone. UCS Advisors is here for you. We're professional capital raising advisors committed to helping you secure funding and grow your business. Are you ready to impress investors? Check your investor readiness with our free 45-second quiz at ucsquiz.com. We believe in you. Visit ucsquiz.com and start your success journey. And remember, always be willing to achieve your greatness.
Just a little under an hour until I hit the stage for another show.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Greetings from the Garden State. I'm your host, Mike Ham. We are here in Atlantic City, New Jersey today at Doc's Oyster House with Frank Dougherty. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be on here.
Yeah, so great to be here. I told you before we recorded and through email that I was so excited to do this episode because I've been messaging docs on Instagram and seeing if I can get something going. And finally we got it done because every time I come to Atlantic City, it is not complete without at least one, a drink at Doc's or some oysters at Doc's. So I'm very excited to actually be doing this with you.
That's great. Great, great that you're here, and we're happy to be part of this.
Yeah, for sure. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that that you're, I guess you call it a restaurant group. Is it a restaurant group?
Yeah, restaurant group.
Yeah,
Dougherty
so
Restaurant Group.
it obviously you guys own Doc's,
right?
And that is your grandfather. This is your grandfather's great grandfather's place. Even better. That's been here since 1897. But you also own 3 other places.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Knife and Fork Inn, which opened in 1912, and we took over in 2005. We started Dougherty's Steakhouse and Raw Bar and Resorts in 2021, and we took over Linwood Country Club in 2018.
Yeah. You know what I think is so interesting about just a place like this, and why I always get so excited to come down here. So I have a full-time job, believe it or not. Technically, I am working, but don't tell anybody.
Okay.
But so when I used to come down, or I still come down here quite a bit for conferences and all that kind of stuff, and they'd be at Borgata or Harrah's or Ocean or whatever. And I would always just be there for 3, 4, 5, however long the conference was. And then just one time we went out, we came here, and I was there's so many cool places, little holes in the wall all over the city, that if you start exploring a little bit, it really kind of makes Atlantic City a cool place to go.
Right. Right. I've always said, if people come down here to gamble, and a lot of people do, which is great, but they're so focused on that, and they don't, the casino then they don't really want you to leave the casino, right? They want you to, they'll feed you, they'll, everything can happen within the 4 walls. So it's great when people come down here for different reasons, whether it's a concert or a show or a, meeting or convention, because they end up going out more, and seeing the rest of the city, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about Doc's, because we're here, and it's been here since 1897. Right?
Yep.
So however many years that is, I'm not a math guy. I'm sure you know. But take me through I'm sure you know somewhat of the history of this place, and it's obviously gone through a lot of ebbs and flows of Atlantic City and a lot of different significant events, and just kind of the evolution of the city as a whole. So can you talk to me a little bit about that stuff?
Sure. So 1897, Harry Dougherty opened up the Doc's Oyster House, which was about 6 blocks up the street from here.
Okay, so this is not the original.
Not the original.
Gotcha.
As far as we can tell, it moved here in about 1918. So he was just he was somewhat of an entrepreneur, had some other businesses on the boardwalk, and was doing some other things. But I guess they started bringing in oysters as well, and he was a fisherman. So he figured, let me open a small restaurant, and it was small.
Sure.
So then when it moved here, and it moved down the street, it was a single storefront, got a little bit bigger. My grandfather, when he got involved, he made it twice the size of what it was, which is now half the size of what it is now. But
okay.
So that a little bit bigger than my grandfather had he got ill in 1965, and my father was an accountant at the time, and he said, I need your help. And so my father got involved, and then my mother was a social worker, and my father said to my mother, "I need your help."
Yeah.
And so she got involved, and then they added a liquor license in like 71. We added it, made it a little bit bigger, but added a raw bar. And I pretty much took over, and my father passed away in 1999, and I got involved then. We made it, kind of remodeled it then in 99, like 2000. And then we did the massive renovation and expansion, where we basically doubled the size of what it was in 20, like 8 years ago now.
Okay.
So
Yeah. And how many floors is it now? Because we're on the second floor. I've never been on the second floor or above. Is there another one up
there is another. There's a third floor, and there's some outdoor space, which at some point we keep threatening that we're going to do something.
Yeah.
But then I just open another restaurant, and I don't have time.
Yeah.
So it's still there, and right now it's storage. But hopefully it might be Doc's deck at one day. Well,
that'd be cool.
One day.
Yeah.
So
what I also think is interesting and cool, and one of the things that I like about the menu, which we'll talk about eventually, is that there's some stuff on the menu that, according to the menu, was on the original 1897 menu, which I think is really cool and kind of like a cool tie-in. Like, that's what I think is so cool about certain parts of Atlantic City, is like how interesting some of like the historical stuff and like the significance of that. And obviously, like, that's so cool that it's like it stays. Obviously, I'm sure there's some pieces of this that may be kind of connected to when it moved down to this place in 1915, but that's like a cool way to kind of make sure that you're like keeping up to date, but also like honoring kind of where you come from.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's the crab au gratin, the crab cakes, they always had fried oysters.
Yeah.
Those kind of staples that you'd expect to see on the menu anyway.
Sure.
So, and then they were here,
Yeah.
back in 1897.
That's really cool. So great-grandfather starts it, then your grandfather, then your parents, now you. Did you like grow up in this business?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At any point, did you ever get like, what, screw oysters? Like, I'm so done with oysters. Like, I'm so over it, like that kind of stuff.
No, I have to say I never did.
Yeah.
We started, I was, 8 years old washing dishes. We would stack milk crates so we could reach the counter.
Yeah.
It was my brother and I have an older brother as well that is involved, but he also has a separate business on his own. So we were always here. At one point, my parents decided to open for lunch. So on the weekends, we would sleep here, and then just wake up. And then over the years, I started doing more and more. I pretty much have done everything. I never bartended, oddly. But
you can now. You own the place.
Yeah.
If you really want to, I'm sure they would let you.
So everything else, and then my father was always back of the house guy. He always cooked.
Yeah.
And my mother always ran the front. And so I, worked with her, and then, and ultimately I ended up in the kitchen a lot.
Right.
And so really kind of worked with my father.
Yeah, that's really cool. And also just kind of like, we're talking about these places that have been here for a long time. And I mentioned to you, like, this weekend, you guys, the Claridge and Tony's have all been here for like longer than some of these other places.
Yeah,
they've been here for forever.
Right. Yeah.
Like, stumbled into the Irish, not stumbled because I was drunk. You stumbled out, but stumbled into like the Irish pub the other day.
Right.
Like, some places that have been here for so long, and like, obviously, like, you gave like the history of kind of like your family's connection with Doc's and owning it and running it and all that kind of stuff. But almost like the city as a whole kind of has gone through like a lot of changes for sure. And like, obviously, like, maybe not you personally, but your family, like, I'm sure they've seen kind of like a lot of the waves that have kind of come through and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There was, I would say the worst part was probably in the late 70s, right just prior to gaming getting passed.
Okay.
It was really kind of deteriorating, and even my parents started looking, and they were gonna open a restaurant in Florida, or just figuring that it might be time to go.
Yeah.
Luckily, gaming came, and there was a lot of promise that it would turn things around. And thank God it came, because without it, like I said, I don't think we'd be here.
Right.
but it wasn't the panacea that that everyone expected. But so that also took some time. And unfortunately, when as more and more casinos opened, Atlantic City used to have a even larger dining scene, right?
Sure.
And a lot of the old time restaurants started to close at that point because they were felt like they couldn't compete with the casino industry. Luckily, we were able to kind of maintain and hold on, and as was the Knife and Fork. So
Yeah. Let's talk about the Knife and Fork a little bit, because obviously, like, that's another historic spot and has been here since 1918, I think you said before?
1912.
1912, even older. But you guys bought it in when?
We took over in 2005. So it was built in 1912 as kind of it was a men's club, and the Lower Chelsea, which is the neighborhood, let's call it south of the Knife and Fork, was just starting to kind of get developed, and the people that were developing it wanted something that was kind of like in between the downtown area of Atlantic City, which is where we are now, and basically this Lower Chelsea home development, that let's call it. So they opened Knife and Fork, which took a long time to build, like 7 years to build.
Really?
Apparently.
Yeah.
So in 1912 it opens up. It's a men's club. It's basically owned by the club members. Prohibition comes. They finally succumbed to Prohibition, and they sold it to the Latz family in 1927. And they ran it as a restaurant, maybe a bar as much as they could back then.
Right.
All kinds of, huge history with the Latz family. But they had it until Mac Latz sold it to me in 2005.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really interesting too, because it's like you mentioned that Doc's got a liquor license in 1971, I think you said.
Yeah, 71.
Yeah, and then obviously, like, Prohibition, like, I mean, not everyone, a lot of people have seen, like, Boardwalk Empire and, like, all that kind of stuff, and how much stuff was going on around this place back then. Do you think that not having a liquor license up until then was, like, helpful during that time? Or do you think it was more just kind of like everyone was kind of doing some shady shit back then, and, like, it didn't really matter?
No.
Trying to get you to incriminate anybody, but I think we're way past that.
I mean, the stories in our fork were kind of legendary, right? It was definitely a speakeasy, and the guys that ran it were the club members. Let's say Cunley, and they're some of the more famous names of that era,
right?
And that they wanted to drink. They were drinking, like, it wasn't they didn't care about Prohibition. And then there was a lot of booze getting run through Atlantic City, right? There's a lot of rum runner houses, things like that. So there was definitely some history of a speakeasy down here. But, ultimately, I think, it's always better to have a liquor license.
Well, yeah, definitely. So let's talk. So we'll take Doc's first. I want to talk a little bit about the menus, and then in the second segment we'll get kind of more into the newer stuff that you have, and then kind of like looking into the future a little bit. So Doc's Oyster House, primarily like a seafood place, you would say, right?
Yeah, I would say Doc's is seafood and steak, and Knife and Fork is steak and seafood.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. There you go. Because I've never actually been to Knife and Fork, so that's on me.
Okay.
But so let's talk a little bit more about, like, the menu stuff. Like, when people come to Doc's, let's say, like, what are the heavy hitters? People get this stuff, and this is what people seem to enjoy the most.
Well, it's oysters are obviously a huge seller for us.
Sure.
And we do a happy hour every day, and everything's half price. So we have half price oysters, and most of the appetizers are all half price. So that's wildly popular. So a lot of people start out with the oysters. We also have crab meat cocktail and shrimp cocktail, and we do ceviche and a crudo now, and some of the things the things that we've added over the years. Then I would say on the entree side, we have got the soups are great. We have New England clam chowder and a corny crab chowder as well. Every now and then, the chef will make a lobster chowder, which is unbelievably good.
Yeah.
And then then the menu kind of is, we have the staples, the Doc's classics. Let's say.
Yeah.
crab cake, crab au gratin, crab saute, fried oysters. And there's the seafood platter, which has been on, I remember making when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then we, add the new things kind of as, there's a wasabi crusted tuna and a halibut with white wine, spinach, and tomato. And, lobsters are, usually, big sellers as well. We usually have from 2 pound to 5 pound lobsters and sometimes bigger. We get king crab. If I can get used to be able to get fresh king crab, which is wildly different than normal king crab.
Right.
Now it's gotten, since the pandemic, it's incredibly hard to get. Yes, everybody wants it, but if we can get it, we'll have that on the menu too.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I think is interesting about the menu too, and some of the stuff that you said, like I would venture a guess that in like 1897 or 1950 or 1980 even, like ceviche probably wasn't on the menu. Some of the stuff that you just mentioned wasn't really on the menu, but when you come here, it maintains its like you still get the vibe that you're like in this like super old, not that it's old and dingy, but like a classic place,
right?
Like a historic place. And even though you have those things on the menu, it's still like you still feel like you're kind of like in that era almost. And I think that's what is really like the allure for me, because I'm like a big history guy. Like I'm interested in that. That's why Atlantic City to me is such an interesting place, because of how much history and like all the people that used to, like some famous people that have come through here and stayed here and all that. And but then you can order like a very modern dish, and I think but it still kind of connects, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And kind of speaks to a lot of like what you've been able to do like in this space.
So when I, growing up, I would start working in the kitchen, and let's say I'm like 12, right? So 46 years ago.
Yeah.
And we had 12 fryers, and I would bread shrimp and oysters and flounder, and like that was, basically you do that all day and then fry everything at night. And, and that was the menu. And then, it's funny how it's evolved now. It's just, there's so much more sauteed items and baked, and we're down to, I think, a fryer now.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that also is, kind of when you were talking about the gaming stuff, and when that got passed, and some like the old school restaurants that kind of got pushed out because of that. Obviously, like when you walk through any of the hotels and casinos that are down here, there's, like big name chefs slapping their name on something, and like a lot of like new modern things that, you have so many people coming through here.
Right.
It makes sense to not just be like a fried fish place.
Right.
Like kind of
you need to
competitiveness. You got to keep up with what people want. And I think that that's really cool. How about Knife and Fork? Like if people go to Knife and Fork, like what are some things? Is that menu kind of evolved the same way?
Yeah, pretty much. They, that's changed a little bit because I didn't have so much of the history there.
Right.
But they've always had lobster thermidor, and we keep that as a kind of one of the staples in the menu. When I started looking, so in 1999, when I came back and took over Doc's, and we got Doc's, I was in New York for a while after school, and then came back, and then we got Doc's running pretty well, and I started looking for a steakhouse, and there were no steakhouses in Atlantic City. It was a weird time.
Yeah. That is weird.
Yeah. The casinos really hadn't adopted that model yet. And I said, well, I think a steakhouse would be good. So we started looking, and we actually looked at what is now Ducktown Tavern across the street.
Yep.
But it was too old of a building. It wasn't going to work. And then my family was friends with the Latz family. And Max said, look, I'm really, I'm getting old. I'm tired. So do you want to buy it? And we said, yeah. And it was going to be a steakhouse. That was in 2003, and then the sale didn't actually happen until 2005. But in that interim, like 7 steakhouses open.
Sure.
So the whole menu for Knife and Fork was a steakhouse menu, and then we had to adapt and change.
Right.
So now it's like I said, it's I always say it's steak and seafood.
Yeah.
It's a slightly higher price point than Doc's, let's say, but the same, we did a full renovation when we took over, added a much larger bar, but a little more history. When the Latzes took over and then Prohibition was repealed, and now the sons were involved, Mac and Andrew. And they said to their mother, well, all right, the father had passed away. Let's add a bar. And she said, not till the day I die. So she died in 1955. And that's the day they added the bar. Which was like a little postage stamp for a bar.
Right. Yeah.
So when we took over, we added a much larger bar, and we also do a happy hour there and everything. So,
Right.
But yeah, I would say, there's also oysters on the menu there. There's, it's like not like a selection of 10 different oysters, but maybe 2 different oysters.
Right.
And a lot of, I guess a lot of other classic dishes, an Oscar, we do a filet Oscar and a couple other things like that. And then, some more, modern things.
Sure. Was that also like a challenge too? Because I mean, obviously like your family has had success running this place up until that point when you buy Knife and Fork, and Knife and Fork to its own, credit had success. But obviously like, you guys come in, and was there a kind of like more of like a balance that you tried to hit because of, how much success, or, the success that they had being, and the longevity that they had having is a better word as well. But then also being able to like put your own spin on it, but not like throw it totally out of whack and make it a totally different place because it's been there for 100 years.
Yeah. It was. And, I was, at the time, I was the chef here.
Okay.
And then I was the chef at Knife Fork. So I had to make sure that, this maintained.
Yeah.
And luckily, we have great people, and we've had a lot of great people for a lot of many years. So we were able to, I was able to spend more time down there. But, we basically it was almost a gut renovation, but let's call it a restoration, because you wanted to save the great aspects of the old building. But you also needed to bring the HVAC system and,
That's
and
important.
the kitchen.
I had to move rooms last night because my HVAC wasn't working.
Yeah.
It was like up 80 degrees in my room. I was like, I got to get out of here. Yeah. So that is an important piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was a balancing act. And then, the same thing with the menu. They had a lot of classic things on their menu that we chose not to continue with. And there was some pushback early on, but, I think it's kind of grown and evolved.
Yeah. I would imagine, too, that, like, I mean, obviously, Atlantic City, I would say primarily, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because it is a shore town, a lot of the people that come through here don't actually live in Atlantic City. Like, a lot of people that eat at Docks and Knife and Fork maybe don't live down here.
That's correct. Yeah.
So, like, if they come once a year and they're, like, looking for, like, that one thing, they'll get over it.
Yeah.
They'll get something new and then be looking forward to that the next time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's an interesting point, too. So, okay, in the interest of time, in your time and the audience time, let's take our break. And then we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll be good to go. Cool?
Sounds good.
All right, so this is the Greenish with Garden State podcast. I'm Mike Cam. We're here in Atlantic City, New Jersey at Doc's Oyster House with Frank Dougherty. We'll be right back.
Voted one of the top 100 jazz clubs in the world, Shanghai Jazz in Madison, New Jersey has been entertaining its customers for almost 30 years with world-class live music, great food, and a commitment to hospitality that creates an exceptional atmosphere. Plus, if you're in the mood for a creative cocktail and incredible vibe, be sure to check out Encore Speakeasy, located downstairs in Shanghai Jazz. As one of my favorite restaurants in the area, I personally guarantee you will have a great experience. Check out the music schedule, the menu, or to make a reservation, head to shanghaijazz.com. The Mayo Performing Arts Center is the heart of arts and entertainment in Morristown, New Jersey. MPAC presents over 200 events annually and is home to an innovative children's arts education program. To see MPAC's upcoming schedule of world-class concerts, stand-up comedy, family shows, and more, head to mayoarts.org or just click the link in our show notes. Bored of going to the same park? Want to try a new local adventure? Well, then check out njspots.com, your home for finding a new spot to discover right here in New Jersey. With dozens of maps to check out, local hiking spots, family-friendly places, and seasonal suggestions, NJ Spots is waiting for you to find somewhere new to explore. That's njspots.com.
All right, we're back for segment 2 of this episode of Greetings from the Garden State. I'm your host, Mike Cam. We're here with Frank Dougherty at Doc's Oyster House in Atlantic City, New Jersey, one of my favorite places to visit, literally in the state. Like, I would say, like, there's a few places that I get so jacked up to come and, like, be excited to actually, like, dine here than this place. Yeah, so the one thing that I forgot to ask about, and the one thing that I think is pretty cool that I think, not that it's overlooked, but because it's not part of the menu or part of, like, the decor, well, it is kind of part of the decor, is the piano bar. Can we talk about the piano bar real quick and tell people, like, if they don't know what that is, can we, like, explain what that is? Is that, like, a classic thing that's been here for a while?
No.
Oh, okay. It gives that vibe.
It's been here a long time.
Yeah.
my mother put it in. Probably early '80s.
Okay.
When they one renovation that they did, she loved to play the piano, and she decided that that they needed a piano somewhere. So there was always a piano with live music from probably about '82, and every now and then people would sing, and she loved a good sing along. So that was something that when we started to look at renovations over the years, we always kept it. And then when we started the big the expansion and renovation, we got it to make one a little bigger and nicer. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's just a nice touch because you come in and like all the staff is like dressed nice, and like the guys playing the piano, and you could sit there too and eat like right at the piano bar. Yeah, that's really cool too.
Yeah.
And like interact with them and whatever. I think that's a cool piece that I wish I asked in the first segment because that was part of it, but my bad. So we got to it anyway, so it works out. So okay, so I want to talk I want to talk about the place in Resorts, which is called, remind me again.
Dougherty's Steakhouse and Roll Bar.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that. Was it like? So I'm going to ask this question, and if it's rude, you can tell me, and I'll ask it differently. Was it kind of like with the casinos and you guys being like an independent type of thing, and then was it kind of like getting in bed with the devil sort of thing?
No.
Like, okay, they're coming in, like. But tell me about that, because I think that's really cool, because I think that's one of the things that I think obviously like Atlantic City maybe has struggled with, is like that connection between like the community and the casinos and the hotels and all that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of where at certain periods of time it's kind of gone awry for Atlantic City, is because there wasn't that connection. And I think this is an interesting thing, like you guys now working, opening a restaurant there and kind of getting connected like that. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So Resorts is the oldest casino.
Sure.
And it was, the building itself, they did add a tower, but it used to be the Shelf on Haddon Hall. And so the building itself has a tremendous amount of history. And the spot that we're in used to be, when it first opened, it was their classic high-end French restaurant, Le Palais. So a beautiful space with like this great atrium, which now we converted to a raw bar, but it's very, very pretty area of the building, and historically very cool.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit like, we had another restaurant in Bally's.
Okay.
That we opened. It was Harry's, homage to my great grandfather. And that was kind of like a sports bar, outdoor dining, much more casual thing. And then Bally's decided after the lease was coming up that they wanted to go it alone, and so we said we parted ways. And I was like, well, we might as well. Resorts came and said, "Are you interested in doing something else?"
Yeah.
So we started talking to them, and it all worked out.
Right.
And those guys are great. So we're happy to be there.
That's cool. That's cool. So talk to me a little bit about that place, because so in the oldest casino, so it does kind of connect to the history of Atlantic City too.
Right.
Is it similar to kind of what you guys do here at Knife and Fork?
Pretty much. It's a more dedicated steakhouse, I would say. They needed they always had a steakhouse there. The in our place before that was Gallagher's. So they wanted to maintain a steakhouse, but we also wanted to add kind of our spin to it, which is oysters, basically.
Yeah, right.
So we opened the raw bar, and we added some other, better kind of seafood dishes, stuff that you wouldn't necessarily say would be on a steakhouse menu, but they're also very popular there. So.
Right. Is there a thing? Because you said this place, Doc's, is seafood and steak, Knife and Fork, steak and seafood. Dougherty's is more of a dedicated steakhouse.
More of a steakhouse, yeah.
Is there something unique about your steaks that is why they're successful in these different places?
We use all prime beef, at Dougherty's. So not really. We do a lot of sous vide stuff, and so that's somewhat of a different cooking method.
Sure.
From a lot of places.
Yeah. I love that.
Care. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Because some people, if it's like a steakhouse, it's like, oh, you go there. Like I went to this one place in the city. There's an aside. I told you it was going to be a conversation. Their thing was like, it was cooked in a pepper crust. So it was like
Oh.
literally a steak crusted in pepper. And so like not only do you have like pepper sweats, you have like meat sweats, and it's just like it was like a lot. And we were seeing a show, and then we went to the theater after.
Right.
And like those Broadway seats are so tight, and I'm in the middle, and I'm a bigger guy, and I was sweating profusely. It was one of the more miserable experiences I've had. But I was just curious if there was like a thing.
You buy a great piece of meat, you don't need to do a whole lot.
Exactly. Like doctor it up, I mean, but that's
Cook
what I
it
think.
well, season it.
Cook it well, yeah. And then you also mentioned off mic, and if you want to talk about it, we can, that you run the Linwood. Is that right?
Yeah, we took over Linwood Country Club. It's about 7 miles from here.
Okay.
And it was also a lot of history. 1912 as well.
Wow.
Opened initially. They were kind of struggling. They were looking for a new operator, and they wanted to get out of the club business, and so we took over, and it's a great venue, and it had a lot of potential for weddings.
Okay.
So we wanted to do a lot of some group functions there. So
Yeah.
we're one of the owners, and we also run it.
Yeah, that's really cool. 'Cause I think like that's like an interesting thing because, it's a little bit different than kind of going a little bit outside the box a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a cool thing because, it's obviously like another historic place, and you guys just love historic places, which I love. Is it a private or a public?
It's the course itself is private. All the food and beverage facilities are open to the public.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We have a restaurant there. We have an outdoor dining spot called the Fox Den.
Sure.
And then the big 7,000 square foot ballroom. So we can do weddings for up to 300. So
That's cool.
it works out.
Yeah. And because there are like a few, like obviously like more historic or, a little bit older golf courses and all that kind of stuff. 'Cause like I've played at Seaview, like I've played at
Atlantic City Country Club.
That was the one really cool thing I remember doing at like a conference was the outing was at the Atlantic City Country Club, and I was like, this is sick.
Yeah.
But we haven't played Linwood yet, but maybe next time we'll come down and we'll do something. But that's really coul. So the one thing that I want to talk a little bit more about is kind of like looking ahead, because obviously like over the last when did you start with Linwood?
2018.
Okay. So like since 2000, a lot of changes, a lot of things have happened. Obviously like the renovations here, buying Knife and Fork, opening up in resorts, doing the stuff at the Linwood. Excuse me. So obviously you have like a passion for Atlantic City, it seems like.
Yes.
And so what first off, what feeds into that? Like why?
I grew up here.
Yeah.
I love it here. It's and we've been successful. Like you wouldn't keep doing it if you weren't successful.
Exactly. That's a great point.
So it's worked.
Yeah.
But I do. I think it still has a lot to offer, and it still has a long way to go. Like,
Right.
And there's a lot more that we can do here, and collectively, I think with government and businesses involved together, we can get it done. But
Yeah.
it's Atlantic City has always had its ups and downs.
Sure.
And they will continue to, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, because I was interested in that and your take on that too, kind of like looking ahead, because I think that's a little bit of an interesting thing too, because there is obviously like stuff still happening here. And what I mean by that is like sort of development a little bit, like, Ocean taking over Old Revel, like that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that's like super nice. So I don't think that they would do that if they didn't see like an opportunity there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like there is clearly opportunity here, but then it's just a matter of like making it happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think like, I'd love to get kind of like your perspective on maybe like what you see coming down the road, kind of like a prognostication almost. Because obviously like, your family, you personally have a history here. You've had success here. It's doable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's so many people that still come through this place, like just trying to get a hotel for Saturday night. I was like, where do I even?
It's hard.
It was hard.
Yeah.
So that means people are still coming here.
Yeah.
And there's like still like, I've had friends that have gone to the music festivals out on the beach and, like all the different stuff. So, take me through that, like kind of like, things you see kind of coming.
That's what everything has to work together, right? Gaming is a very popular attraction, and it's great that it's here, but there's other things, and all those things need to work for the whole city to work well, right?
Yeah.
you need more concert. We need more meetings, conventions. We have a great convention center. We have the Boardwalk Hall is a great music venue or sports venue. We have the beach and the boardwalk, and there's a lot of attractions, right? There's also, we also have some problems, right? There's some homelessness, there's some crime. And it's a matter of, getting rid of some of the problems and highlighting some of the, better attractions.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's going to, that continues to happen. Obviously, Hard Rock was a big change for us when they came in, and they've been very successful.
Yeah. That's a cool place too.
Borgata was, a tremendous addition to the market when they opened, and now Ocean's doing a great job. So, and all the other ones, as we've lost some casinos over time, and the market's kind of pared itself down and kind of rebalanced, let's say, now everybody's at a point where they're at least have, some money, so they're reinvesting and the properties are getting better. And, one thing we've never had here is, if you look at the communities down beach, let's say Ventnor, Margate, Longport, right? Even Ocean City, the amount of building and second home development, and it's completely missed Atlantic City, right?
Yeah.
Brigantine, and north of here, same thing. Brigantine, Long Beach Island, so many new houses in the last 10 years, let's say.
Yeah.
Nothing here.
That's interesting too, because like my take almost, obviously like that's great, but then it turns those places into just like a total ghost town, like outside the summertime. So like, while that may be like nice, but that is interesting that it just totally missed Atlantic City, because there's so many hotels here. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But we also have a lot of vacant land.
That's true.
Which would be nice,
have something.
Have something.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. That's a good point.
So,
yeah. Because like I just, last night got in yesterday afternoon, kind of had some lunch and walked around a little bit. And it's just like such like an interesting thing, because it's like you see places that are like, like Docks and some of the other places that we talked about, that are like so historic and to me like so fascinating and interesting and cool. And then it's just kind of like, it's just some of the stuff just doesn't seem like it goes together sometimes. Yeah. Which I think is sometimes maybe like a little bit of the problem, but at the same time, like it's like you feel it, like it's like right on the cusp, it feels like, but it feels like it's been on the cusp for so long.
Yeah, right.
But that's what I think. But again, like I think it's really cool that there are places, like we mentioned some of the ones that I'm going to have on the show and some of the places that are around here that have been here for forever. Right. And there's a reason for that. And I think that is really like kind of the, like this place and the place like Knife and Fork and some of those spots, like those to me are kind of like the places that are like the flagships of like what success really looks like in Atlantic City. And I think like, as it kind of continues its ebbs and flows, like those are the places that I think are going to kind of help push it, in that positive direction. And at least that's my opinion, but I could be totally off base, but hopefully that.
No, I agree. I mean, it's just, a matter of getting it done.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we're coming up on the end of the episode. I want to make sure that we hit people with websites, any social handles. They'll all be in the show notes. Even if you miss one, I'll make sure that I get them all in there. Okay. But like, what's a good place for people to go to like learn a little bit more, make a reservation, that kind of stuff?
All the restaurants have their own website. So, docsoysterhouse.com, knifeandforkin.com, Dougherty's, Doughertysteakhouse.com, and linwoodcountryclub.com. So, that's probably the best place to start. Okay. And then, we have a pretty big social media presence. You can sign up for our newsletter, which we send out once a month for, that highlights everything that's happening at all four of the properties. So.
Yeah. Awesome. And then I would recommend, and I'm sure you may, at most of these places that you have, making a reservation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a Resi?
And
right?
we're on Resi for all of them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's like I was a little bit nervous because I couldn't find one for tonight. And then I had a notification set and it was like 7:15 and I was like, boom, in.
Okay.
Like ready to go. And so, but this has been so great. I was so happy that we were able to like get this set up. I know it was like a little bit last minute, but I appreciate you taking time and sitting down with us today and chatting and, just giving me a little bit more of the history of Docks and all the other places that you own. And I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I'll make sure that I put all the websites, and I'll put the social handles in the show notes as well. So that people just go click, go right there, check them out. Again, this is like Doc's is personally one of my favorite places in the state, and one of the places that I get excited about going to. So if you're ever in the area, please check it out. I'll also put greetingsfromthegardenstate.com, so you've already listened to this episode, but you can check out all of our other episodes, whether it's here in Atlantic City or around New Jersey. So this has been the Greetings from the Garden State podcast. I'm Mike Cam. We were here in Atlantic City, New Jersey at Doc's Oyster House with Frank Dougherty. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.